I didn't realize it was so easy to get on a bike and ride from my house to my workplace. That realization really transformed how I looked at how I was living, where I was living.
So, how do you personally define livable cities?
Livable city is one that's safe for all people, not just men, women, but also age. Is it safe for people to walk and rest for intergenerational, all genders? Is it attractive for people to come and play? Why do we need to pay for a gym membership if we could just go for a walk 20 minutes a day?
My guest today, Jullietta Jung, is an urban mobility strategist who has built cycleways during a pandemic in Sydney, designed 15-minute neighborhoods in Pune, and spent her career asking one question: why do we keep building cities for cars and calling it progress? She's worked across continents, and this is her observation on Indian cities.
On paper, when you draw a street, one lane for one vehicle. You go to India, one lane could have 6 different two-wheelers on it. They describe two-wheelers like water. You'll find any gap, they'll fill a gap. Despite the challenges they face, I've seen young children ride to school in those conditions. My jaw sometimes is on the floor.
Hi Julieta, welcome to the Human City podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ruchita, and for inviting me to be on your podcast. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
So Julieta, you have worked in diverse urban environments across continents. So how do you personally define livable cities? And what indicators matter most to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Conceptually, for me, a livable city is one that's safe for all people, not just men, women, but also age. And that's something that I've noticed in certain areas where it feels safe for older people to be and also access. I live in Sydney where it's quite hot. I know you live in Delhi and it gets quite hot there as well. But ensuring that we have enough tree canopy and it has protection from the elements. So for me, again, going back to the indicators, is it safe for people to walk and rest, and is it attractive for people to come and play?
Right. So, you were involved in one of the 15-minute neighborhood projects in India. Working in Indian cities, we have very big sprawl. You think this concept is really possible in cities like India, or it can only be implemented in places where there are smaller neighborhoods?
I think India is fantastic for 15-minute neighborhoods. The issue isn't about the sprawl, it's you have good density within your urban form to allow for all your services to be within 15 minutes of walking or cycling or public transport. So I think that's key to having a 15-minute neighborhood. I really do love the idea that you have access to street vendors. It adds to natural surveillance, and having people about on your streets, a friendly person who supports the perception of safety on your streets. So yeah, I think India is, you already have a lot of 15-minute neighborhoods, to be honest.
So, what did you do differently when you were implementing this concept there?
Yeah, the biggest difference in India was the permeability of motorcycles, like the presence of two-wheelers and how they can permeate through a lot of different areas. So modal filters was really important for us to preserve quieter streets for walking and cycling. And what are the treatments that would allow for a bicycle rider in, but not a motor two-wheeler into those spaces? It's quite a challenge, and you'll see a lot of bollards being implemented around India as the only way to really deter from two-wheelers. But what we did do with PCMC to support the 15-minute neighborhood is implementing more cycling infrastructure. But we also want to see more pedestrian space. Sometimes the street is open for all road users, and there's no real dedicated space where somebody in a wheelchair or with younger children or people walking would feel safe. So encourage more formalized, safer spaces and have pedestrians be elevated a little bit so that it's separated vertically from motor vehicles. And then also introducing shorter crossings at the intersections. Some of those intersections are quite wide, narrow that distance so that people can walk shorter distances and not be exposed to motor vehicles. So one of our strategies is working with children and caregivers and hearing their stories on how they would like to go to school. Like, what do they enjoy? And what are some of the barriers to them doing that? Sometimes it is parents saying it's too dangerous for them. and sometimes it is themselves feeling unsafe. So using engagement and stories, we created some videos to help put into the community, to encourage the community about the barriers that children face right now, and what they would like to see changed in their environments.
You mentioned that you had to create physical barriers for the two-wheelers to actually enter that area. But when it comes to most of the Indian cities, there is a huge resistance. Was it as a pilot?
Yeah, you're right. There's only so much space available. Some places are quite wide, sometimes 24 meters. There was some challenges bureaucratically. How do we convince to give the allocation? So it's a lot of training, workshops, influence through discussions with with leaders. Leadership can make or break a project. It's a progressive commissioner really understood why we were trying to improve walking and cycling for their communities. So it helped motivate the engineers to think similarly. So it's not just one effort, but a combined effort from many different organizations and leadership to change the mindsets so that you can get allocation. So in terms of design, you can sometimes do physical separation, but when you can't, it is about how do you make it safer for people. In Australia, we're having that discussion now about safer speeds and reduce our speeds to 30 kilometers an hour. If we can't get infrastructure, it's actually cheaper to just calm the streets down so it's safer for people on our streets. So it's not one solution for all. Like you have to take it case by case.
So, what local realities reshaped or challenged your understanding of neighborhood scale planning?
On paper, when you draw a street, one lane for one vehicle, you go to India, one lane could have like 6 different two-wheelers on it. I described the two-wheelers like water. You'll find any gap, they'll fill a gap. So the challenge for me was, just the scale of volume that we're dealing with in the Indian cities. But equally, the volume of people walking and riding, I'm impressed. Despite the challenges they face, I've seen young children ride to school in those conditions. Like there is a lot of two-wheelers, but then there is also an old culture of riding a bicycle. Again, more men still ride bicycles. So yeah, it's still a gendered issue. And we're trying with these cities and creating safer spaces.
You were closely involved in the implementation of Sydney pop-up cycleways. So, what were the biggest learnings from that experience, both in terms of design and politics?
Politics is a good one. The pop-up cycleways was during the COVID era, and politically, the reason was a health epidemic. And the health department were able to influence so many other departments. So with a health order, which meant that people couldn't use public transport as easily, and that influenced transport to look at how do we accommodate safer and healthier and more private ways of moving about by riding a bike. So the health order unlocked this ability to implement and roll out cycleways without the usual consultation processes. Everyone in the department was able to work collaboratively because there was a top-down order to deliver these cycleways. And it felt really good that everyone was on the same mission and to deliver 15 kilometers of pop-up cycleways that is mostly still implemented, and demonstrating that there was a definite need to have connection and an alternative network to private vehicles, public transport, and a sustainable network for people to move about their city.
So, during your work at Global Designing Cities Initiative, which lessons from Sydney's were most relevant and transferable, especially in the Indian context?
The Indian context, consultation and communication, I was quite lacking. How do we communicate projects? How do communities understand what's happening in their neighborhood? In India, if the project is a green light inside of government, then they'll just go and construct. They'll not even tell anybody. Maybe you'll see one sign that says, this is a project by blah, blah, blah government. If you're a community member, you're like, what the hell is going on? They can't ask the questions of why you're doing this. So I think communicating with the community earlier and making sure that they understand what's going to happen and if it impacts them, like how are the changes going to benefit the community, and also keeping them informed in any changes or disruptions that will happen during that period and just give them some reassurance, some value in some good communications and upfront communications.
So, what are the three most important design principles for creating streets people actually want to walk or cycle on?
The perception of safety, like how do you measure that? The perception of safety about women, children. It's having natural surveillance, having abilities to see other people on the network, making sure it's got safe provision for walking and riding a bike. So the perception of safety influenced by the design of the streets. So one of those things that we don't really think about is crossing is so important. So how do we make that crossing safer and more pleasant? In India, there's quite a lot of barriers. Some people are climbing over these barriers that are over 1.3 meters high. For women and elderly people, having that opportunity to rest, particularly in longer distances. There's lots of tree canopy cover, so making sure there's safe space, plenty of crossing opportunities, and a pleasant environment.
You often talk about safety in terms of design, not policing. So, what urban design choices most strongly influence how safe or unsafe people feel in public spaces?
Yeah. The great example is where I grew up, and I've got a public library as a student, was able to go there and study, but the environment was quite dark to get to from the bus stop. So making sure you've got that adequate lighting, adequate viewing from different entry points, and then the presence of other people. So how do you encourage natural surveillance with other services? Are there any other shops about that can operate at certain hours? Sometimes operations can be restricted by regulations. So making sure that those regulations play nicely with other service operating hours. And the frequency of the services of public transport for me was so infrequent. If I missed one bus, it would be an hour. So I wouldn't want to risk that and resorted to getting dropped off and picked up by a private vehicle. And that's not great for the environment. It's not great for my independence.
So previously you mentioned that you're trying to come up with slower speed limits, 30 kilometers per hour in most of the areas. Now, in India, we have cider roads. So how do you implement speed limit of 30 kilometer per hour as a design limit?
One reason, the wider the space they have, the more opportunity they have to drive faster. And it's designed to be faster speed environments. So now we're retrofitting our streets with speed limiting devices such as speed humps, raised crossings, to actually narrow the street down. So it's a challenge. Let's just change regulations to 70 kilometers an hour, and you can't just enforce something like that. You need some educational campaigning. You can't be creating wider roads and expecting people to drive slower on these wider roads. I want places to have safer environments, safer speeds, and I would definitely be encouraging to be narrowing our streets down.
So if you had the resources to transform one city into a cycling friendly human scale model, so what would be your criteria for the selection?
I really loved how the schools and the school children really enjoy enjoyed getting to school. I really love seeing children at schools and the buzz around schools and the activities they do after that. They go to the shops, they go to the corner, they hang with their friends. And so for me, I would look at an area that has a lot of schools and universities, also a good opportunity. So looking at areas with influential young people and a city that has progressive officials to help champion this. So if I have a good community, good political alignment, and a good activist group that can help support programs that could help educate and link into the universe and what the city is doing.
So cities everywhere, they are trying to be more walkable, safe, and climate responsive. So what gives you the most hope about the future of urban mobility?
Young people are a bit more aware of environmental issues now. There's real great opportunity with the young people, and that gives me hope that they'll influence to change their behaviors or not adopt bad behaviors. So I'm very hopeful for the future of sustainability and sustainable mobility.
Thank you so much for giving us time and speaking on these issues.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.